What's up, guys? We are back. And we've been talking so much, Gabby, about, the realities of the world we live in right now, right? Which is there's a global pandemic going on and things are just shifting in terms of how consumers are behaving and everything, how we're living our everyday lives. I was texting you earlier and I said that Foot Locker sales they were down 41% in Q1. And so much of it is we talked about, well, if you're home, are you really out here buying kicks and buying things? Because where are you going to rock these things? It doesn't seem like we're allowed to go outside anytime soon.
And maybe I'm biased, but the answer for me is yes. I am buying kicks in quarantine. But it is a really interesting time. And I think because I come from a background of PR and marketing and whatnot, and I'm not so much in that world now, but I love the way that Foot Locker is tailoring their content for quarantine. Like I posted my #HouseKicks sneakers that I was wearing at home, and it's kind of forced me to go back in my collection and try on more of my kicks and see what I've got, So I love that side of it. But at the end of the day, like, how does that convert to sales? Like, what are brands doing to get you to buy? Because awareness is great. And I think that there's a lot of really cool stuff online right now. Nike's doing some stuff on their sneakers app, showcasing their fans and people that follow them. It's not just about like the standard influencers that you're always seeing. I think right now that's really cool to see the regular person get featured on these channels. But at the end of the day, what makes you want to buy? I mean, have you bought any sneakers in quarantine? Tell me.
Well, of course, I bought the Hair 2.0, the Ultimates, right? Like those I got.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, am I buying clothes and things like that? No, because I wear my cozy clothes all day because generally speaking, I don't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because there's a whole industry around this, right? This influencer industry. And as companies are either freezing their budgets, cutting their budgets, or eliminating certain parts of their budgets altogether, the influencer community is being hit, right? All these people you see on Instagram and the various channels who've got X amount of 100,000 followers and always look like they're at some photo shoot with some fresh kicks or some fresh clothing or what have you. The companies are like, why are we spending money on that if it's just about awareness? Because again, if sales are, and this is industry wide across so many industries, well, why are we doing that if it's not leading to direct sales, right? And I think that's the thing. Everyone jumped in on the influencer bandwagon because they realized social media is where we have to be. And, you and I coming from that PR marketing background, how many clients do we have that were always about, we have to be on social media? And that's what they would say. And I was like, okay, right, but what is the plan to be on social media, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, okay, awareness, how are we going to drive them to do what it is you want them to do, which is ultimately pay for your product and or service?
Right. And I think it's a really hard time because social media now more than ever, because you have that captive audience, is what I like to call the COVID creativity, is that people are now getting creative in quarantine. And those are the ones that have kind of stuck out from the crowd, whether it's going live and having new topics or, creating a digital series, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Depending on what it is, I think that's where there's kind of the gap being closed, right? So for the influencers that used to be up here, it felt very aspirational. And now that, we're having this real moment that's going on, this really weird time, it's like, okay, well, aspirational is cool and it takes pretty pictures, but like, let's talk about some real stuff. And how does that convert into sales without you feel like you're being sold? I think there's a lot of places that are doing a really good job. DSW is doing a campaign where if you buy one, there's like a buy one, get one for the front liners. So I think that's really neat. To me, that incentivizes me because I feel like I'm doing my part. Or, athleisure's always been my jam, especially as I get older and realize you can still look cute in a single color fit. You know what I'm saying? But Puma had a 70% off sale. Whoa. And even though I should not be shopping, I'm like, I had to. How could I not? And I got matching red joggers. Yeah. Ooh. Shouts to Puma. I know. Maybe you'll see them someday. I don't know. Red is very much outside of my all black ninja outfit comfort zone, but we might have to go with it. But I think like Adidas, I needed a new pair of Superstars, and they never go on sale. It is like the one item that is a staple. They never need to go on sale, which is why they don't, right? Yeah. But they went on sale and they were 30% off. And I was like, I need to replace mine anyway. Why not get a new pair now? And I think that's where brands are really seeing that conversion factor. And, it's like, it's more of a need. Yeah. Like if you want more athleisure, that's kind of the positioning. that is really winning in this marketplace
Yeah,
right now.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Something you said earlier, which is the creatives, right? Like, it's one thing if you've got a million followers and a brand partners with you and they know, okay, because of the amount of followers you have, let's, again, to your point, do this aspirational shoot in like Bali or whatever, who cares, right? Okay, but ain't nobody traveling to Bali right now or doing any of those things. So if you
I wish.
if you can't pivot, right, and do something else within that, maybe move to a different platform, use TikTok, whatever it may be, like, how are you keeping people engaged, right? And again, to your point, how is that awareness driving the sales? Because that's what all these companies are looking at right now, right? Every quarter they're looking at, oh, we're losing money, right? And with, again, the reality of where we are, people losing their jobs, like, it's, it's bad out there. We know it. Like, how are you going to transition and change your game as an influencer to meet the demand, right? I mean, it's, especially now in the digital age that we live in, pivoting and flexibility is so key. You've got to have that ability, or in many ways, you're going to be left behind, right? If your whole thing is, it's because I got a million followers, if we can do that, well, what happens if you can't go and do fancy things somewhere? Now what?
Right. How do you speak to the average person, the average sneakerhead? The person that maybe doesn't have 100 pairs of Jordans, but you do want them to shop. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I were talking about this before, and I think it's super interesting that we are not the average, at least me, I'm not the average consumer.
Right.
I'm an over consumer, and I'm happy to keep the lights on for Nike and Adidas and Puma and all the other great brands that are out there because I love it. But the average person isn't necessarily buying Jordans, but how do you target them? And I think from an athleisure standpoint, and that's why the chunky dunkies are so interesting right now, timing wise, it's either super collectible, very limited release that you feel like you need to have it. It taps into that psychology that we were talking about before. Or is it, and what was the name of that style that you told me about? It was something I've never heard of that apparently is Nike's most popular shoe.
The Nike Tanjun, yes, the Tanjun, right?
I don't even know how to spell that.
That is their number one selling shoe. But again, it's something that, and we talked about this, as you guys all know, I'm a contributor to True Hoop. Shout out to True Hoop and Henry and Judy and Coach Thorpe. We had Sneaker Week recently, and we had a footwear expert on the show, and he talked about how collabs and everything that we talk about, that's what drives the conversation and what everyone talks about. But when you look at the actual hardcore numbers and what sells, first of all, they don't make that many pairs of the collabs, which we already know. So those by numbers alone can't be the brick and mortar. They can't be holding the lights up over in Oregon. It's this Tanjun shoe, right? This $65 black shoe with a white swoosh on the side that you find at Dick's Sporting Goods, JCPenney, what have you. That is their most popular shoe in terms of volume and dollar amount. And again, how this works is Nike markets the collabs and all the fancy stuff, right? The cool collaborations and all that stuff to, right, people of color and young people of color particularly who live in urban environments, right? And then they decide yay or nay, what's cool or not. Classic example is the Chunky Dunkies seem like people like them. The 7-Elevens, people were not out. Nike scrapped the release on the 7-Elevens, right?
Real fast, yeah.
Really quick on those. But once the culture decides this is what's popping and what's good, it trickles out to the mainstream, right? And the mainstream doesn't always buy the collabs. They go, all right, I'm going to get that Nike, but I'm going to get the Tanjuns, right? Those $65. And that is the business model they use. And it's such a fascinating thing. And I do wonder, again, as we start to see changes and things happening, would it behoove companies like Nike? It's like, look, because let's be real, we know a shoe doesn't cost $250 to make. A shoe probably costs $10.
Absolutely not. Don't say $10 because I'm in my head. I've created this fantasy land where I get sneakers that cost. Let's keep
not
it reality, but it helps me sleep better at night.
They cost between $10 and $15 max. Okay, right to produce. But if you, hey, how about you give those out to those influencers in those environments, right? Because again, you're gonna get it from the culture that drives it. This is what matters now. And again, it's the model already works, so why not do that? It's very fascinating, and I will be very curious to see how brands pivot going forward, as I think things are going to change a little bit. Pivot.
And I think pivot. I could not resist. Every time I hear that word, I swear. But I think to your point, it's the halo effect, right? Like insert Beyonce song. It drives you to the site. So like, I've never seen a Chunky Dunky say I'm the average person. I'm like, what is this? Let me go to Nike.com. And then all of a sudden, all these other suggestions come up. And then it gets into the psyche being like, oh, I didn't know. Like these, Air Force One lows are really cool and they're
Mm-hmm.
cute. And it's like a similar
Mm-hmm.
silhouette to a Dunk, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, where, to your point, this halo is happening, right? It's like the influencers set the culture and the tone, but it's like Sandy in Illinois is not rocking a pair of chunky dunkies when
Definitely
she
not.
goes to work at the hospital, for example. Bless Sandy, we appreciate your work.
Right.
Thank you for this during this time.
She's getting the
But
tangents. Yeah, she's getting the tangents,
yeah,
right?
right. And there's so many styles, and I think like we are so in this time of consumerism that we get caught up and forget that. I know, my present company included. The fact that I didn't know what a Tanjun was, I'm like now Googling it as we're sitting here being like, Siri, please locate Nike Tanjun, you know? But I think that these brands do a really good job of targeting to their audience, and they know it a lot better than we do. There's so much that goes on, whether it's a 270 or if it's a Nike free,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the market and the price point and the retailer, there's so much that goes into it. It's really cool to just kind of let that marinate for a little bit.
I love it. And that's a perfect spot for us to wrap another episode of the Kicks and Shit Show. Gabby, we are all over social media. You can find Gabby, of course, at Gabby Rosenthal. But Gabby, what other platforms are we on?
So super exciting, guys. We are live on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel, watch our videos. We love feedback. Thank you to everyone who's been texting us. Get the conversation going. Put it in the comments. We're going to start doing more on Instagram as well to just really get you guys involved.
Absolutely. We're also on Twitter at Kicks and Shit Show. And you can find me at JS Hector. And for those of you that audio is your jam, we are on SoundCloud,
right.
the Kicks and Shit Show. So definitely look out for that stuff. And we're so happy to be doing this journey with you. Please keep the feedback coming. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.
Thanks, guys. Peace.